Okay, so today we have Professor Mirco Musolesi. Mirco leads the Machine Intelligence Lab, which is part of the Autonomous Systems Research Group, and he's here to talk about autonomous decision-making with AI systems. And some of his research that he's done that sparked my interest, and I think is quite related to this, is his work on multi-agent reinforcement learning, where he's done work based on trust-based consensus, decentralized coordination, and modeling moral choices and social dilemmas. So very excited to have Professor Mirco Musolesi. Thank you for coming.
Thanks a lot for the invitation. The audio is fine. Okay. So today I'm going to. So thanks for the invitation. I like a lot of this format. That is a bit new for me, but I will try to essentially highlight some points for discussion because this is a discussion series. So the idea is, I think, sort of a conversation around these themes. So a bit of an agenda for this talk. So what the talk is about is, so we talk about essentially highlight some ideas and thoughts about decision making in AI. And so the theme of this discussion is about, let's say, AI threats, also broadly defined. So I will try to bring up some problems, challenges, and some interesting areas of research in this space. So the talk in itself is not about technical details. Happy to come back and give talk about that, or like my students, some are here, they can come and give a talk in details about some of the more, let's say, technical aspects of this presentation. So the problem of decision making in AI, I think it has been in general, this idea of AI threats and in general has been, in my opinion, driven recently, in the past years, a lot from journalists and from the press. I have this, not only, clearly there are also effort in academia and think tanks and so on, but the general discourse in the public has been driven by a lot by, let's say, it's very, very, very specific, if you want, case studies, let's say, problematic situation that we encounter. So some are very serious, like the use of compass for decision making for sentences. That is the one on the right here. Here there is a famous case of Microsoft when they tried to release a chat that was not really, let's say, fine-tuned, and then you get also very weird things. This was on the BBC some years ago. An AI teacher appointed at a UK boarding school, and then you read it, and it's just a chat bot that is answering the question of the student when they have a question about, I don't know, the timetabling and so on. But it's just to say, and clearly the people say, oh, now education is driven by AI, there is no human touch anymore, and so on. But at the end, so it's sometimes are exaggerations, in my opinion. And as I said, so there are also various very serious problems, like the case of gender discrimination in an automatic decision making for for financial decision and so on. So what I say, it is a mix. The thing that I see potentially as problematic here is the fact that some of these discussions are not really evidence-based. Okay, so I think for us, and also being in at a university, the importance of evidence-based discussion about these themes, in my opinion, is extremely important. So this is probably the first theme that I want to make about this. Then clearly there is the problem in general of decision making is also quite a technical problem. So we know, so some people like you work, in reinforcement learning, and work on problems that are highly technical. So also explaining like the highly technical aspects to the public, in my opinion, is another aspect that is extremely important in this discussion. And also potentially having this discussion based on also the technical limitation of these technologies. So and in my opinion, it's also quite a funny, very interesting area. And sometimes it's also very funny. I don't know if you've seen the video of The Economist, that is this one. Let's see if it works. So you have this kind of, so this is like, it is decision-making in action, essentially. So this is like you can see here, okay, it's moving, yes. So it is like a agent-based driven analysis, like essentially simulation of an economic system. This is, say, like it's sometimes also quite funny in terms of visualization. There's no audio, but it's fine. So, but the idea is here is you might also use this for very, very serious things, like for example, for economics. You can use like decision making in fields like economics. That is one. This is one of the AI economist. I don't know if you've seen this paper. Probably you saw it. In this, why I'm liking this one? I'm liking this one because this is, in my opinion, is a good example where there is like an application of a very well-founded theory to a very precise and specific problem. And at the same time, I think, and there's another message that I think is like another point that I want to make here, making like research that is also impactful and starting potentially from a real problem like in this case was taxation, I think is important. So again, to stress evidence-based about important problem, and then clearly these are important problems, and at the same time, when we consider this problem, we should also consider the technical aspects. So this is like, I would say, the framework of the talk in terms of thinking about these issues. And as I said, this is like decision making is not something that we essentially invented as computer scientists, even if we have that tendency to take. But essentially, it has a long tradition. Clearly, John Phenomenal, that was also a computer scientist and a physicist and a bomb maker. It was so essentially started the discipline more or less in the 40s. And again, this is like an example, in my opinion, where we should also be open to other disciplines. So the other message that in my opinion is quite important when we are talking about this issue, and not only the problem of decision making, but also the risks that are associated to it, in my opinion, is very important to be to interact with people from other disciplines, because what we do most often is linked, or it might be even based on the work of other disciplines. So these are the other message I want to give. And this is an area, in my opinion, where we can also give back. We can give back because these are extremely serious things. I think the work that we do might have impact also back to other disciplines. For sure, one of the most important application of decision making, if you want, is in conflict resolution or peacekeeping. This is like the work of, you can see here is the strategy of conflict. Is again, it's a very, very good book by Thomas Schelling that was also a Nobel Prize for economics. That essentially is about the application of game theory to conflict resolution. This is so the work that we do has importance also here. And as you can imagine, so and this is probably the risk that I was talking about also when we were organizing this talk. One of potential risks of this work in this space is the fact that we might end up applying our technologies to domains like, for example, conflict strategic decision making that might have a direct impact on decision that can involve humans, clearly, but also like in a very large number of people and in situation that can be like extremely critical. Okay, so thinking about the technology that we have now, this is probably, in my opinion, one of the potential, I say not a risk, but it's something that we should think about, is how the technology that we are developing now for decision making can have application, okay, in economics, but also increasingly in a situation of conflicts. But another application that I want to say, that I want to highlight, is also application in other fields. And again, it is related to this idea of thinking about this problem more broadly and learning from it. Especially, so here I put like I don't know if you ever heard about George Price. George Price was from UCL, and he wrote this paper in I think it was the 70s, 73 actually, on modeling conflicts, okay, in animals and indirectly also in humans, and mathematically. And the point that I want to make is that the decision-making process can be modeled, okay? And by modeling it, we can also think about potential risks and misuse. This is something that probably, it is trivial, the thing that I'm saying, but reflecting on the fact there is a tradition in other disciplines. One is, for example, IR, the other, the international relations, the other one is biology, where there's been like a long tradition in understanding how certain situations might lead to conflicts, problems, unexpected behavior. And looking, I think, at this type of work might be extremely helpful for everyone. So this, and I think like the AI community tend sometimes, not say to forget, but maybe to have a certain way to see at these problems without considering also the existing literature, if you want, and this tradition that I think is extremely interesting and important in this space. It is a tradition of building, of studying essentially human behavior using, or animal behavior in using computer models, okay? And the interesting aspect here is, and related to the theme of this discussion, is the fact that we might use these models to try to understand if any unexpected behavior might appear in the system under consideration. And this is, I think, very interesting. So, and there, in particular, George Price was interested in cooperation. And cooperation is a big theme, as you know, in AI. And cooperative AI is a big area at the moment, and especially in multi-agent systems. And George Price was quite interesting because George Price was a researcher here at UCL. He was studying cooperation. And at a certain point, he was, so he decided essentially to leave his research and to sell everything he had and essentially give everything to the poor and live in a commune. And he also a very sad of, so he at the end he also took his life, unfortunately. But is a very interesting story of a researcher. And since I mentioned it, I want also to suggest you this book is called The Price of Altruism. I think it's quite relevant for some of you that are interested in these themes of cooperation and potential conflict. So this is it's a good book. I wanted to mention this because it's very, very interesting, something that, in my opinion, we should rediscover, if you want, more and more. And going back now to conflicts and conflicts among humans, if you want, what is the risk that I wanted to highlight? So the risk is an opportunity, if you want, as well, but the potential problems associated to use AI techniques in, say, in the situation room. So when you are going to then, and this is increasingly the case, when you are going to make a decision, and increasingly decision-making is supported by AI technologies, there is a potential risk that the unexpected behavior and unpredictable behavior that emerges from this technology is not considered in taking the decision. Here I'm talking about like a long-term, if you want, existential risk. I'm talking about medium-term, short-term existential risk, if you want. But the problem of the fact that you might use technology that we understand, we don't say we don't fully understand, we understand, but given that complexity, some of the actual can be also like understanding the output of this algorithm might be difficult. It might be that the actual also misbehavior of these systems is difficult to understand or to model. So going back to this idea of the importance of modeling these systems, I think this is becoming more and more important when these systems are really used right now to make a decision, situation room here, but also like in the military context and so on. Okay, so this is something that, in my opinion, is very interesting, and I think we should be. So we are kind of responsible for that. So thinking about like maybe contributing also in terms of work in this space, I think is important. And it's again like sort of like a book club here, but is another book this is on the military context about decision making and autonomous decision making. This one is a book from Porchard that works in a think tank in Washington. Is a very good book on the military context and using in AI as well in the military context. He has also a new book out on this, on AI and military decision making. Okay, and finally, and I mentioned this because I think it's quite gives us also like a direct example of the risk that I was talking about. The problem of the fact that AI is extensively used now in finance, as we know, and we see already what happens when you have unexpected behavior that emerges from the interaction of different systems. It's a dynamical system. We have emergent behavior from this dynamical system that might be unexpected. This is like the Security and Exchange Commission chair that the US says that the next financial crisis could come from AI, in the sense that like you can have this kind of cascading effect and so on, and that are extremely difficult to model. Okay, these are an example of what it might happen also in other fields, in my opinion. Because we have this now, but this might happen also in other fields. Okay, so then there's a question. Okay, so like, it seems that computers can do everything, but there are things that computer can't really do yet, and things that you might be the people that essentially enable computers to do. Okay, and also in this context, as I said, also I'm referring to this specific context of potential emerging risk and challenges in decision making. So Hubert de Vries was a philosopher, and he was quite critical of good old-fashioned AI. There was this book is 1972 actually, and it's extremely super. And all the people of the 60s that were working on logic essentially. I don't know, probably you are aware of this book. I don't know, but this book I think is like and also like in his following work. He also, I think, he pointed out some very interesting aspects about computers. So he has these 4 points that I want to bring to your attention. So one is the sort of biological assumption that brain processes information in a discrete way by means of biological equivalent of on-off switches. So the fact that at the end, what we have a computer that is in any case limited by the type of representation that we use. That is probably not that important for us, so but I wanted to list it. We have this kind of psychological assumption that say the brain can be used as a device operating a piece of information according to formal rules. That this is another kind of assumption that was made, and I think is not that important for us, but I wanted to say these are the way that computers work. Then there is this idea of this epistemological assumption, so that all knowledge can be formalized. That is something, in my opinion, that it is difficult to do, okay? And also, like, okay, now we have a like foundational model and so on. So we are kind of assuming that we are able to get all possible knowledge in this system, but it is not always the case, okay? And assuming that is the case is problematic, especially in situations that potentially can be risky, okay? So the idea, so we have this epistemological assumption that is not always true, but that seems to me, but is like but there is a risk, I would say, that we are assuming that all the assumption and all the knowledge is contained in these models, and might not be the case. And this can be a cause of potential issues, okay? Being aware of this, in my opinion, is important. And the final one, so this kind of ontological assumption, so that the world consists on independent facts that can be formalized with precision. So this idea of independency as well. So the world is very complex, and assuming that we can formalizing things as without considering their interaction is probably is problematic. Okay, this is in the context, I would say, the knowledge that is necessary for taking a decision. So like this is something that I added essentially. And if you want to take like a reinforcement learning example, if you want to make a decision, the state might be really partially observable. And what you have in the state can be also interlinked, okay? So this is just another thing that I want to highlight, that when I was preparing this talk, I say, okay, I think this is an important aspect in my opinion that sometimes we don't think about. And I think I want to discuss with you. It's not that it's just my thoughts, but it's just to bring to your attention and for discussion. The interesting thing is that you also wrote a book 20 years after called What Computers, like it's kind of an updated edition, What Computers Still Can Do. That is quite interesting because in this version, 80s happen, and essentially all the revolution, if you want, of neural networks and so on, and connection systems took place. So now in this book, in my opinion, has a bit more positive view of AI, especially in relation to the possibilities of essentially deep learning, if you want, neural networks, but also reinforcement learning. It's very interesting. And I suggest you can find this text quite easily, and it's quite good to look at what people were thinking while developing the technology that we have right now. Especially like this, like it was around when the reinforcement learning essentially was being developed, and so it's very, very interesting. Okay. So in general, so the problem of decision making in machine. Just to summarize a bit. So decision making in machine is one of the biggest interesting problems in AI, in my opinion. But this is a question about decision making about what and for. So if you think about it, why we are using this technology. So it can be for helping humans in their own decision making, can be for helping humans to take their own decision, okay? But in order to act individually, but also for acting as a group, or to collaborate with other humans. So there is this aspect that is like the aspect of collaboration as well, that is very important. Another aspect that I want to stress, there is this difference between decision-making in humans and decision-making in machine, and the fact that we have this interaction with these two. and we struggle to understand how humans make a decision, we might design the machines, but we might not know how the machines are designed. And this is a problem of using a system for decision-making in the situation room, okay? Because we don't know exactly what's going on. And this is it's a lot of people talk about human in the loop. In my opinion, this is like, oh, human in the loop today. And it's good because like if you need to do labeling, it's very good to have a human in the loop. If you want to do fine-tuning, it's very good. But also, increasingly, we have these machine in the loop systems where we have systems that are helping us to do things or taking decisions for us. I don't know how, and probably they are the same thing, okay? But there is, I think there is like not a lot of attention about the fact of designing machines, systems where the human and the perception of the human and how the person uses machine is considered. And this is quite important if you want to essentially give the machine the possibility of taking decision, okay, being autonomous or semi-autonomous. And this is something that goes back to, if you want, the tradition in the study, if you want, of potential existential risks in this field. Are current machines fully autonomous? And in my opinion, no. So at least from a strict definition of the term, because that in my opinion is the right one. So because machines are not able to set their own goal. And this, in my opinion, at least with the current technological scenario, prevent from certain type of risk to happen, because machines are not able to define their own purpose, their own goal. This is, I don't know, probably some people disagree, but at least in the current technological scenario, this is not the case. And I understand, I mean, I think that, of course, there is a lot of very interesting work on safety, potentially when we have machines that are fully autonomous. But at the moment, there is this step that, in my opinion, is not there. And this is something that I think we should be aware of, okay? I mean, this is my point of view, okay? And I'm very happy to discuss like with you, and maybe I'm also don't want to be controversial, but this is, I think, the current landscape at the moment. Okay, so try to what we can do and also interesting things that we can do. So there are these challenges to deal with potential risks that and potential negative aspects or negative outcomes from these technologies. But these are great opportunities to do good work, impactful work, not only for dealing with these risks, but also doing interesting, impactful final research. Okay, there is always this kind of duality, use and misuse of these technologies. And I think I think we can really build better technologies if we think also these problems of risks are associated to technology as opportunities for building better technology, not to be like scared of them or scared of the use of the technologies, but being very aware, as I said, evidence, knowledge, technical knowledge of the technology, understanding the fact that we interact with humans, the limitation of these technologies. We can really, there's a lot of space here to do very interesting work. And I'm trying to now to list some of them. Briefly, I think we said 40 minutes more or less, no? Yeah, okay. So one is one that many of you work on, and we are also working on, is the problem of building systems that are cooperative among themselves and also with humans, okay? And maybe using this system in order to, for example, as a basis for positive decision making, for example, in a diplomatic context and so on, IR context that was mentioned. This is, and also like for very problematic situations where like you have institutions that are difficult to define, where we have like also different beliefs and so on. Cooperative AI, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This is probably a very interesting topic. And as I said, to come and talk more, or some of my students can give talks about this. And then, and this there are a lot of interesting problems there, especially now, because as we know, when we are in a situation where we have a finite amount of resources, typical cases like the environment and also the natural resources, this is a problem. It is also a problem where we might have also competing systems that are competing resources, if you want, competing systems that we want, that are essentially collaborating, or they are fighting, if you want, for a certain type of resource that is finite. Is that what I'm saying? Like, this is quite generic, but what I'm saying, like, if you have different planning systems or different systems that make the allocation decision for allocation, if you have multiple systems that are driven by individual goals, then you might end up with the tragedy of the commons, where you have a non-ideal exploitation of resources. I'm talking about in very generic terms, but can be like, this can be applied to markets, for example, can be financial markets is a typical case, like exploitation of resources in a way that is automatic is still, in my opinion, like an unsolved problem. It's an unsolved problem, if you want, in economics. But designing system and regulation, a regulatory system where decision-making system lead to a positive outcome for the society and for the group of individuals that are using them is a big problem. And again, just to like, if you don't know the area, I just put like a paper on, but I think most of you are aware of this area, cooperative AI. So this was like a survey that came out some years ago. But in case you are not aware of the area, this is a good introductory survey, just as a pointer. And then the problem of making decision and considering like a different ethical framework and moral framework. This is work that essentially Lisa, that is here somewhere, I swear. Okay, Lisa is there. If you want to, Lisa can come and give a talk about this. Is working on. So the problem of try to find a way for embedding moral values and ethical front constraints in decision-making systems. I think this is a super interesting problem because you might have different ethical, philosophical frameworks that need to interact together potentially. And I think it's unsolved. It's very hard to really model also decision-making that is framed in, is underpinned by moral values. This is an open area. Lisa, so is doing a PhD on this, but I think this is like an area where there is a lot of work, interesting work to do. And this is also an area where interaction with other communities, the humanities and philosophy, I think is quite central and key. And then, like I would say, like the final part is about also, if you want, like a bit of regulation of this. So, regulation of autonomous machine for certain type of application might be a solution, because like regulation is the thing that we are thinking about. But this is a problem. So what about, and I think it is the problem that a lot of people are thinking, and I wanted to highlight this as a final point. And I really still, I don't have like, I want just to give the audience this point. So the problem that we haven't solved, and is related to the cooperation, to also the ethical framework. So the fact that there might be asymmetric behavior and asymmetric regulation. So what about if a country decides to regulate, whilst another country will not regulate? what happens to the country that is going to regulate these type of technologies, or following certain type of moral standards, especially also on at international level. I'm also like in diplomatic scenarios, in military scenarios. This is like, I think, a very big risk. And I don't have an answer, because like imposing regulation is something that we tried as humans and we see we are not really that good, looks like. But this might be, I think this is challenging. It's challenging, but it's something that I'm very happy, would like really to hear about what you think about it. And also there is potentially a competitive advantage of the actor not respecting the rules. What happens in this situation? This might be very risky. Okay, this might be very risky. And are there any ways for strong incentive to do so? And then there are another aspect. So there is this problem of asymmetry. There is also the problem of emergence, if you want, vaguely defined. So, and this is like, I like this. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I like it. This paper of sparks of artificial and general intelligence, where essentially what they were claiming in this paper was that, okay, there is like some very interesting emergent behavior. There is, in my opinion, there is some interesting emergent behavior in foundational models. But again, this emergent behavior is very difficult to model. Okay, you know, like everyone, it's kind of, I always say to the student, it's kind of becoming a sort of experimental physics. So you have a system, you are observing the system, and you try to see what happens if you probe the system. It's like really experimental physics. And emergent behavior and modeling this is difficult, also because we know that emergent behavior might be very difficult to model. Like we have tradition about this, especially also when you have interaction. Okay, this is the other past paper. Interaction between agents, interacting particles, interacting humans, interacting states is a problem. Okay, it's quite difficult. And it's a problem, essentially, a general problem that, it has a big tradition. The tradition of studying emergence in complex systems. This is like another classic paper, the physics 72 again. More is different, it was a good day, yeah. That is like a paper about emergent, the nature of complex system and their emergent behavior. Anderson, in this paper, kind of seminal paper, discuss about how the application of fundamental laws is not very easy in systems where you have a lot of interactions. So more is different. And more is different also in AI. And I think there is a lot of potential work to be done in understanding emergent behavior. Look, in complex systems, still an active area, because we haven't really figured out how to model the system, except for certain very, very we have some models, but they make very strong assumptions. Okay, and we don't want to have assumption for systems that actually are deployed widely in the real world, and we would like to try to understand how to deal with these potential problems. Okay, this is more in this different, and at a certain point you might have behavior that is completely unexpected, chaotic behavior. And this again from physics. Okay, so period 3 implies chaos. This is a paper about like emergence of chaotic behavior. It's another seminal paper in this field. We have behavior that looks even random, but is not. So we have a sort of deterministic behavior in this system. And I think we are just at the beginning in terms of understanding how to think about these foundational models, for example. And this can really lead to, as I said before, to unexpected situations. These problems of modeling complex behavior, chaotic behavior, have been studied also in the context, for example, of a financial system, and has been used also to understand or to try to understand past crashes, for example, in financial system. So I see like quite a useful parallel there in order to study this problem. Okay. So regulation in particular, the one that I was talking at the end about the regulation of algorithmic financial market, is show that essentially shows that some sort of protection is possible. So we can use agreed framework rules. We can have automatic breaks in the system. We can have a focus also posteriori on what we can have a focus on what it can go wrong before, and a posteriori try to analyze kind of sort of forensics in terms of potential misbehavior of the system. I think that I started this idea of financial market because there's been a lot of work around this type of system, and there are algorithmic decision-making systems that are already deployed. So I think it might be like a good area to look at. This kind of mechanism are not perfect, but I think there are lessons that might be drawn from them. And again about this kind of unpredictable behavior, there is also an aspect in this system that is some sort of form of creative behavior that is happening, or some sort of where this unexpected behavior comes from some form of, let's say, creative behavior. So the question is it really creative? And I put there like a paper that is a recent paper that we wrote with George. Is here. George is there if you want to talk with him, and he can give a talk. But there is also a problem of the fact that there is also, I think this is quite interesting in this system, a sort of emergent behavior that looks creative. If it is creative, then it's very difficult to regulate. Then the question about if it is creative or not, we think it is not really creative, but it looks like creative. And modeling something that is new and novel is very hard, okay? And this is the context, for example, of foundational models, okay? Just to also conclude this part. So at the moment, in the current technological scenario, a system set sub-goals and not goals. So for that reason, I think they are not fully autonomous, and certain type of risks are not there. We don't have unpredictable goals, so this is a positive. So it makes the problem easier. The problem will become also when we will have a situation where the goals in theory might be set. So also this creative aspect. So if I set a new goal by myself, that might be a problematic situation, okay? Some people might say is new, because I think about like the paper from Stanford of the agents, or the interacting agents. There, the agents set a new goal. Is really a new goal, or is a sample from an existing distribution? So, and again, it's not to dismiss the work in this space of safety. In my opinion, is super interesting, but at least at the moment, we have problems that are related to sub-goal to reach a goal that is predefined, in my opinion, at the moment. Then everything will change if we have systems that are also setting goals by themselves. Okay, what we can do now. So, as I said, the importance of evidence-based policy. This is the first thing that I want us to summarize. The importance of being involved in this problem as a scientist. There's a lot of interesting work to be done for the public good. The importance of discussing this matter with people from humanities, social sciences, and so on. The importance of working on problems that will lead to positive outcomes. That is, again, something that we should focus. And finally, I think try also to have importance of having a positive view of these technologies. And I think it's also our role to make sure that also policymakers will think about technology in a positive way. There is a potential risk that I see, and in my opinion, happen with the AI Act, that these technologies are seen as dangerous or only problematic, because a lot of the discourse was driven by the negative case that we saw at the beginning. Trying also to think about this technology in a positive way, being very aware of the risk that I listed, I think it is fundamental. And this is not a Panglossian view of AI. So I don't know if you know Pangloss. Pangloss was in the Candide of Voltaire, was like a person that was a philosopher that it was essentially repeating that we live in the best possible world, okay? And we don't live in the best possible world, so it's not that we have a point of view that is the point of view of Pangloss, or Dr. Pangloss from the Candide, of Voltaire, and clearly what I did was, the second, I also asked ChatGPT to give like a discussion of, but I will show you later of the problems of AI in terms of, from a point of view of Candide, of Pangloss. I suggest you to do it by yourself. It's quite funny. Yes, so like to reframe all the problems of AI from the point of view of Pangloss with a positive view. It's possible to do these days. But anyway, it is not about forgetting about this problem. It's about being aware of this problem. And okay, this is again is automatic generated. Not keep parenting. This is like it's automatic generated. It's like creative AI. It's a meme creation tool. Not this, okay? But I think we should have a positive view and trying to also enjoy what we are doing and having also some fun. And so I will finish my talk with this generated completely nonsense meme. Okay. And okay, good. And we'll finish here. I wanted to thank the people of my lab. That are some of them are here. As I said, we are happy to give talks about the topics, like more technical talks. Today was very, say, very high level, if you want, about like general problems. And also a commercial. So I have a postdoc. So if you are interested in a postdoc, please contact me. So the ad will be out soon, but just contact me if you are interested. And yes, that's it. These are my contact details. Okay, thanks a lot. Quite long.
We've got sometimes some questions. Feel free to head off if you want to. I'm going to try and use my phone as a microphone for questions. Please keep questions short if you can.
Okay, sure.
Shall I kick off with a short question?
Yeah, okay.
So you mentioned a lot of these things that we don't fully understand yet, and that this might cause risks in the future. Can you be concrete about what kind of risks you're imagining?
So like for example, in terms of the thing that we don't know, like in terms of modeling or like.
Yeah, that was one where you had these 4 points from this book by Dreyfus of assumptions that go into AI and how if those fail, then there might be trouble. But what kind of trouble are you imagining?
No, the problem that I imagine is the fact, like as I said, there is a problem. Like for example, if you take a decision, it's typical. You can have also like a very practical problem. This is a practical problem of taking a decision. I don't know, should I stop this nuclear plant because or not, given the what I see happening. If I have a sensor, as you know, that doesn't work, I don't have a full view of the nuclear plant. So I might take a wrong decision. The risk that I'm thinking that if you rely a lot in like planning, or like for example for say diplomatic military action, and thinking, or it can be also industrial planning, can be like economic planning, on system that you like too much without really understanding what's going on, or understanding the limitation might be problematic. So risk can be like economic risk, can be financial risk, can be diplomatic risk, can be military risk, and so on. So I'm thinking about these very practical problems, and I think it's very, very real as well.
Okay, thank you.
I think my question is, if we want to inject AI into decision making, how do we make sure that the models that we use are actually capable of the task we want to solve, and not like they learn an internal model that is actually woefully too simple and works for the majority of all the cases, or let's say all the test cases, because a simple relationship is enough to model it. But the moment you have an edge case or something that is like, even within distribution, just a unique set of inputs that are within its training set, how do you know it doesn't catastrophically fail?
Yes, exactly. So that is this is the problem that I was saying, like you might not have the full knowledge, and the full knowledge can be like that you have only some information about your state, and in my opinion, the only thing that you can do at the moment, clearly, you need to think about, have a system that have the brakes or like that makes the person that is taking a decision reflect about what you see. So my point was, there is a potential risk in like delegating too much, if you want, to system that might be simple. That you say like, all might be. I'm not saying that it is something that it happen all the days, all the time, and for many tasks is probably perfectly fine to use this. But there are things that maybe we need to think about also as a designer, to point out what is possible to do and what is possible to do, as in terms of responsibility as well. Or like the fact that I don't know, I'm pretty sure that like the people that design system like foundational models for health, they are thinking they're they are fully checked. But for example, fully checking a system, a foundational model for health, in my opinion, is fundamental. And as you said, maybe it's too simple. So do we want to have the human in the loop, the machine in the loop in that case? Because do we have all the knowledge in this system? So like a surgeon that been working like 20 years or 30 years can be compressed in a foundational model. Also like it's very, because not everything that is, it's something that I didn't say, but not everything that is in our human experience can be summarized easily and used in a data set for a learning model. So I think that is the simple thing that you are saying, to be too simple, but also can be also the data, the view of the world can be too simple.
Hey, thanks for the talk. You mentioned this distinction between goals and sub-goals as it relates to autonomy, where AI systems like aren't autonomous because they can only create sub-goals, humans can create goals. I guess a claim you could make is that humans' intelligence is a product of natural selection, which has the objective of, inclusive genetic fitness. And so like all of the goals that we create are kind of sub-goals of that one. What is the kind of relevant distinction between the goals that humans create and the goals that AIs create? Is it just like the AI distribution is like much narrower and more predictable?
No, I would say we are going to free will here. In theory, we have, depends like how you can see it, but we set our goal like day for day. I mean, there is the general goal of stay alive, okay, and maybe also like to reproduce and so on, okay. So it is like the general goal. But what I'm saying, like there is also like a set goal setting that you can say is free will. So if you believe in free will, you say there is goal setting because I have the free will of setting my goal. In a machine, a goal usually is given from outside, from a human or the designer. So this is the way I see the problem. Does it make sense? So it is the fact that we have external goals that are given externally. This was my point of view. Yeah, you can respond.
Yeah, I guess that maybe I'm still a little bit confused about like externally, because you could say that like the natural selection objective was given externally. Yeah, what is, in what sense like are my goals said to be internal?
Okay, so yeah, I see what you mean. Like probably also, yes, talking about, I see what you mean. Like you probably have like a meta goal that is not the day-to-day activity of the human. I see what you mean. I probably you can see in the same way, but I don't know. It seems to me that if you think about like a system that is running, okay, at some point, it is given externally, yes, but also the type of, I don't know, it seems to me that there are two things here. One, that the sub-goals are somehow dependent on the goal that is set. So as humans, we are also good to create sub-goal from out of nothing, potentially. The question is, are we or not? There is a creativity question here. So from that point of view, I think if you want to see like the meta goal as, but then we see the sub-goal, we are also able to set new sub-goals. I know that is a bit of recursion here, but the fact is we have general just goal, both, say, assume that both machines, the machines and humans want to stay alive, okay? we are able to set new sub-goals that are like sample from, we don't understand really clearly how this works. But I believe, at least I believe that we have the capacity to set new goals, and you are free to set new goals without an external, if you want to be philosophical, this external input that can, in a machine can be a really input that the fact that so people that don't believe in free will, essentially, they say, I have an input, I will react from that input. Okay. And a machine, in my opinion, is like that. If you believe that humans have free will for various reasons, for example, there is also very mathematical reason that you don't have a full observable state, so and quantum aspect or the problem, and you cannot make a decision is not fully dependent on your inputs. Okay. That is, in my opinion, is the human. Okay. Is different from the machine that is fully dependent from their input. So this is another way of reformulating it, if you want, more mathematical. Happy to discuss more, but I think there is this level as well. I was thinking like at a different level, but I understand your point. You can have other level of indirection. This is the thing that you were saying. Okay.
All right, and since Anthony had his hand up, do you still have a question?
Yeah.
I will stay around. I will stay around.
Yeah, it's probably more of a philosophical than practical question, or even a relevant question. But when you were talking about what computers can't do, you said an epistemological assumption, which sounded like is always precluded by the incompleteness theorem, that no formal system can be consistent and complete. Would you say that's true?
This is a very good question, because like it is related to the point of your name. Sorry, no. So the question is, are we as human, are we slave, let's say, of the Gödel incompleteness theorem or not? Probably, I think no. I think we aren't. So if we aren't, we are more powerful of a machine in that respect. And the question is like, can you have a machine that creates truth outside the arithmetic system that has been programmed in? It can't. Yes, and clearly it is like what I think is a consequence of that as well. Yeah, it is a consequence. Right. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Let's leave it there.
Yes.
So yeah, next week I think we'll have to have Roger Penrose come and settle that question.
Really? Okay. No, because he gives talks. I went to a talk of him.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
It's fantastic because he still like his like transparent slides. Yeah,
Yes.
with animation as well, one on top of each other. Yes.
All right, so we'll end the Zoom call here, but let's give Mirco a final thank you.
Good.
And you say you're around to...
Yeah, I'm around. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mirco. I will record it and get it sent out as well, so thank you.